Thanks very much for the presentations, and apologies, I'll have to leave just after my contributions. Just so the witnesses will be aware, we've had quite a number of presentations over the last number of weeks, and the committee, I think, in general, feel that this is our one opportunity to do something about the Leaving Cert. If we don't do something now, we'll have lost an historic opportunity. You know, I have a sense that the education system in general perpetuates inequality. And therefore the Leaving Cert also perpetuates that inequality within the system. It prepares you to be good at doing a Leaving Cert, but doesn't necessarily prepare you for much else. And people with means can buy results. They do so by stepping outside the system and, you know, facilitating their children to go to the Gaeltacht if it's for Irish, or to access grinds if it's for any other subject, etc. And there's a great disparity between what certain second level schools can offer, and we saw that in terms of of COVID and the digital divide, but also that in terms of Daesh second level schools. I think it's 85% of students make it to Leaving Cert. So, you know, we have a system that we feel needs to be radically overhauled, but how do you do it? So there's two issues. One is what are the students studying, and secondly, how do we assess what they're studying, and is it fair, or is it an accurate reflection on anybody's capability to lump a load of written exams at the end of sixth year and expect that to be an adequate reflection of anybody's abilities? And of course, all the commercial pressures that go in with that, and the journalistic obsession with points and the ranking of schools. Can I ask that sort of the business representatives here, and I'm trying to be as fair as I possibly can here, isn't there a hard business case for the eradication of educational inequality? Doesn't it make sense for presentations from ISME and from IBEC and from others to make radical positions in terms of the economic viability of the state, for prosperity, that inequalities within the system would be gotten rid of, and that we would have a fully literate, 18, 19-year-old cohort leaving school, that we wouldn't have 1/3 of children in disadvantaged schools coming out with basic reading problems, that we wouldn't have that level of drift from 16 years onwards in disadvantaged areas, that we wouldn't have the gap, we wouldn't have 17.9% of our adult population functionally illiterate, that we wouldn't have people falling through the cracks and therefore leading lives that don't contribute as much as they possibly could to their own happiness, to their own well-being, and to wider society. Isn't there a hard, cold economic case to make for the eradication of educational inequality? And do you not think that your own presentations possibly into the future could be more balanced in terms of, yes, what you need for the needs of business, but also what you need for the wider economy, and the wider good, the wider society? Because I sometimes think presentations from are a bit lopsided. And could I ask anybody else who wants to contribute, do you agree with my assessment that the Leaving Cert basically makes you good at doing the Leaving Cert, and that we need a model, which will involve, I have to be honest about it, teachers embracing the idea of potentially self-assessment of their own students? I think that's something that we got used to over the last 2 years in terms of the COVID response to the Leaving Cert, and I think that's something that could potentially be part of a future Leaving Cert. But there are my two main questions: the business case for the eradication of educational inequality, and secondly, the future, how restrictive an assessment model this is for what students are studying. Thanks, Chair.
Who wants to take that?
I see Maeve and Neil jumping up.
Ms. Costello.
Yes, thank you for your question. I think you do make a really valid point, and I think the important thing to highlight here is the types of challenges that we are going to be facing into the future, and COVID is a good example of this. Things like climate change, things like land use, things like food security and sustainability, demographic changes. they're business challenges, but they're also wider community challenges. So it's important that we don't completely separate what's happening in future of work and in the business environment from what is happening in the community. So what we really need is, when we have an education system, is that it is geared towards preparing everybody to be able to face these challenges, whether it's within the workplace and developing solutions and responses to these challenges, or whether it's in the broader society, and to ensure that they have that level of resilience going forward. And that, again, requires these broad concepts and buckets of skills around things like problem solving, critical resilience, digital literacy, numeracy, and general literacy as well. So I think the challenges that we face as a business community are shared with the broader community, and it's working together through the education system that we can best build the resilience of the community overall for the benefit of everyone. And I think the point you made earlier around the assessment process, from our perspective, it is the assessment process which is driving how students learn. So we really need to ensure that the assessment process embeds the values that we want to see in the students' education experience. So that assessment process should therefore look at things like problem solving, critical thinking, these group works, and understand how can we actually measure those in a practical sense. And things like portfolios of achievement, work experience, short modular micro-credential courses, continuous assessment, all have a role to play in the broader picture. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come in there?
Chair, thank you very much. We would absolutely agree with Deputy Ríordáin on that one. It is absolutely, there is absolutely a business case for this. That's why I'm here today and took up the invitation. It's also why in our pre-budget submissions, on our submissions, for example, to the SME task force, we are continually emphasising the importance of education. I would, if I was cynical for a second, I would say, this is one of a long list of business priorities for us, for small business, that are also ignored by the body politic, and we want to see this one addressed. I'd also draw your attention to the fact that we have been campaigning now for 2 years for a basic business qualification for small businesses. We want to upskill our own people in this sphere. And the last point I'd make is, businesses contribute to the upskilling requirement via the National Training Fund deduction. So 1% of PRSI is taken off employers and put into the National Training Fund. And as I understand it, that there's close to €1 billion in there, which we are trying to allocate intelligently to get best impact for the business community in specific upskilling. But I absolutely agree with your point that there is a solid business case to remove inequality in the Leaving Cert and, of course, pre-Leaving Cert.
Chair, how much time do I have left?
Okay, Deputy Ríordáin,
can I just ask Ruth a direct question, if I might, just about STEM and all-girls schools, or access to STEM within our highly gendered second-level system? About a third of our second-level schools are single-gender, and there has been a traditional challenge amongst all girls schools, which I think is changing, but possibly not changing enough, about access to some STEM subjects. Can I ask, is that something that you agree with? Is it still an issue? And secondly, does remote learning that we have seen over the last 2 years offer an opportunity for schools into the future that they don't have, the traditional dynamic within the school to deliver a certain subject, that remote learning could actually fill that gap?
Absolutely. So that whole use of digital technology, particularly where we have out-of-field teachers currently covering a subject in school, I think we could absolutely, use methodologies like that to get really high-quality teaching across different schools. I think we need to think about breaking down those barriers. But when it comes to the gendered aspect of schools, I mean, there was some evidence before which showed that perhaps girls did better in STEM subjects in all-girls school. I think looking at that evidence, it's very weak, and you'd have to question what are the other aspects that are going on in a gendered school that's giving you those outcomes. And I think for me, we've talked a lot about education needing to reflect society and the challenges that people are going to have in the workplace and on an ongoing basis. And I think, that diversity, diverse working in teams is what we need to see. And I think that's what we should see in our education system as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Ríordáin.